Day 4 of Eagles training camp is in the books, and Carson Wentz, Deshaun Jackson heating up there. Orlando Scandrick, you just heard Mike Sennett in the update tell you he is on board, and the Eagles are excited to have him in. What kind of role? We've been talking a lot about, where are they going to play Sidney Jones? What are they going to do with Avonte Maddox? They've already got Mills. They've already got – and now they've got to bring in a veteran corner, John. So let's kind of start with Orlando Scandrick, who was in a veteran player. Why do the Eagles need to go outside the organization to bring in more cornerback talent?
Well, short term, they don't have bodies at the position. I mean, 3 of the projected top 6 can't practice right now. And when you're in training camp and you have all those reps and it's 90-plus degrees, you need bodies at that particular position more than most. Very similar to wide receiver on the offensive side. So you need a certain number of bodies. And as I said, 3 guys can't practice right now. So that is part of it. But also the fact that this team has championship aspirations. And we'll see Cre'Von LeBlanc has a sprained foot. He was in a walking boot. He's in a rollabout. Doug gave his week-to-week parlance. That means a multi-week injury. So who knows how long that goes. You might start talking about, is he going to be ready for week 1? And, by the way, Orlando Scandrick might be better than Cre'Von LeBlanc. So you have to weigh that in as well. So I think all that enters into the equation.
Well, I was going to say, you bring in Scandrick. That doesn't seem like the kind of signing you bring in as a camp body. That seems like the kind of guy you bring in here because you're trying to improve. And I guess that means somebody else might be in some danger.
Well, I mean, Jalen Mills would be the most notable. He's not on the field. He's still on the PUP list. He started on the PUP list. Very strange injury. Kind of went backwards. Started out as a sprained foot, ended up with surgery. And if you think about Ronald Darby, for instance, he tore his ACL in mid-November, and he's at least able to do individual work. So Jalen is somebody you have to keep an eye on. And right now, I recall us, Mike, talking a lot in the offseason, and I talk about the modern NFL and the mentality can never have enough corners, and it's showing up. I mean, you think you have a lot, and all of a sudden you think, wow, 6, should we trade one? And I said, no, they're not going to trade one. They're down 3. They already had to pick up 2. You need corners in this league. And the Eagles know that after going through what they went through last season. So they are intent on making sure they're not going to be in a similar situation as they were last year if guys start getting banged up.
So, you talk about the need for corners, John, and there's been a lot of news circulating around LeBlanc, which is someone who you just mentioned. If you have to predict what's going to happen with him, is he just going to remain an Eagle, or are they just going to wait for him to get healthy and then potentially make a move? Do you see him getting traded? What do you think they plan on doing with LeBlanc?
Well, he's not getting traded. I mean, right now, he's not healthy. So nobody's going to trade for a guy who's not healthy. Second, they need bodies at the position. I don't know where that rumor got started because the Eagles do have so many issues. He showed up on Thursday, got through practice. We saw him in the locker room, seemed fine, and then wasn't at practice on Friday, and people started speculating the Eagles were going to trade him. I said they're not going to trade him now. I mean, they need him for practice. It turned out after practice, Jim Schwartz confirmed he was hurt, and he sprained his foot, as I mentioned. And then there's more speculation on how that happened. But that's all to be sort of ironed out. But then the second part is, and I always point to because there's a lot of Eagles fans that don't like Jim Schwartz for whatever reason, mainly because he doesn't like the blitz. But I say even those fans kind of highlight how good Jim is at his job. when they count people like Crevan LeBlanc, and this is not an insult to Crevan, but like he is some kind of constant in that defensive backfield. This was a guy who was on the street and didn't have a job in November last year. No one of the 32 teams thought he was worthy to be on an NFL roster at a particular point. The Eagles needed help. They brought him in. They schemed him up. He played well. He deserves credit for that. But we're not talking about a top-tier corner in this league. So we're talking about the sixth corner on the team. And if Scandrick is better than him, you have to add in a number of equations. He's 32 years old. You have to weigh the future in it as well and sort of serve those two masters of trying to go for a Super Bowl, but also think about the future. So I think it'll be competition. He's got to get healthy. He's got to come in. But Crevan LeBlanc was never 100% certain to make this football team. And you could say trade him, but he's not going to get a lot back. As I just said, he was on the street in November. What do you think you're getting for him?
Exactly. It's amazing how much steam, just his gossip and news and notes have picked up. But sticking with the secondary and the corners, John, let's say there's a game, coming up in a few days. What's the depth chart look like? How's the rotations been at practice? Who's playing where and who's getting the majority of the time in those spots?
Well, Rasul Douglas has been right corner in place of Ronald Darby. In the left corner nickel, they rotated each day. Avonte Maddox is ahead of Sidney Jones, but they rotate him each day. So the question is, who's going to be the starting left corner in base, and then who plays the nickel? Ultimately, I think Avonte is going to be the starter and then move inside in the slot when they're in nickel, and then Sidney Jones would come in on the outside. That's where they are sort of right now, but they are rotating back and forth, those two players, to see who can handle the jobs the best. I've said since day one, and Sidney Jones, I talked to him Saturday, he said the exact same thing, and he always says, I'm an outside corner. I'm an outside corner. Avonte Maddox is a slot corner. He's better in the slot. He should be in the slot. So to me, the only question is, should he also be the left corner in the base defense, which you're only in, understand, 20-25% of the time in the modern NFL. So should Avonte Maddox be a three-down player or just a nickel player? I think that's the big question. And until Jalen Mills proves he's healthy, that's the way it's going to go forward at that left corner position.
John McMullen's with us, talking football. Of course, Eagles back. And, we're very early in the mix here. So a lot of guys are obviously – some guys aren't even out there yet, because of injury. But has anybody raised eyebrows to this guy came back a lot better than he was when we last saw him last year?
Well, I think I don't know if it raised anybody's eyebrows, but I think everybody in that building thinks Dallas Goedert is going to be a star at tight end, and you already have a star at tight end. So I think.
Hey, what do you do then? You got Zach Ertz there. You got Zach Ertz, obviously. What do you do? What do you do in that? I mean, do you try to watch tape of the Gronkowski?
You play a lot of 12 personnel. You play a lot of two tight end sets every single day. We're only 4 days into camp, but every single day the Eagles have started off team drills in their Tiger personnel, which is 12, which is two tight ends, which is Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert, and that tells you something. They understand. They already played 12 last year more than any other team in the NFL, and it's only going to increase because they kind of know. And I always say, young players, the Eagles hope J.J. Arcega-Whiteside turns into a really good player. They hope Miles Sanders turns into a really good player. Everybody in that building thinks Dallas Goedert is going to be a star. And he's going to be on the field. They're going to find ways to get him on the field.
At the expense of?
Well, most notably Nelson Aguilar, because he would be the third receiver And typically when they play 12, Dallas would play inline. He would be the inline tight end. Think of Rob Gronkowski role, and Zach Ertz moves to the slot. Think the Aaron Hernandez role when the Patriots had the great offense revolving around two tight ends. Now, I don't want to say it's going to be that because Gronkowski is one of the great tight ends of all time. But they do prove if you have two really good players at that position, you can succeed. It's just a different way to go about it. And it comes down to the question of who are your best players, who do you want on the field. And ultimately, I think the Eagles are going to say, Dallas Goedert's one of our best players. We got to get him on the field. And by the way, Zach Ertz is always going to be on the field. He's coming off a 116 catch season, which is an NFL record for tight ends. He's already won the Super Bowl. They already know how good he is. They just have to think they have two really, really good tight ends.
Right. This isn't a situation where Ertz is kind of like the aging superstar who's at the end of the line here. This guy's hitting his prime.
Yeah, not at all. In fact, Doug constantly says when he's game planning, it starts with 86 and 17, and 86 is first, 86 being Zach Ertz, 17 being Alshon Jeffrey. Zach Ertz, no, they know how good Zach Ertz is. There's a reason he caught 116 catches last season. You'd probably prefer a little bit less because you have so many playmakers and you want to move the football around a little bit more. But when a guy's open, you throw it to him, and he's always open.
John, one story that's really caught a lot of steam since day one here is Djax and Carson Wentz, and the chemistry conversation has just continued to grow. Oh, is there chemistry there? They come out and say they've worked before training camp has started together to get that chemistry down. What have you seen so far 4 days into camp, and do you think that story is a little bit overblown?
Well, yeah. I mean, everything's a little bit overblown, to be honest.
Yes.
It is practice. Yes. But, yeah, I mean, it's up and down. Today was phenomenal. I mean, they had three big plays today. And if you go back to Saturday, they had Sunday off. They were not good at all, and they spent time after the practice working out, doing some extra things, and it seemed to pay off. But, yeah, I mean, it'll be fine. That's the thing we just kind of talked about with the tight ends and the receivers. I mean, you have to look at it from the opposing defensive coordinator standpoint. What are you going to take away? What are you going to try to take away? You can say you're going to double team Deshaun Jackson, but then, I mean, better players are going to kill you with Zach Ertz and Alshon Jeffrey. And you try to take them away, and Deshaun Jackson all of a sudden's got men press coverage on the outside, and he can still run by anybody. He just ran by Vontae Maddox today for a long touchdown. And that might be the second fastest player on this team behind Deshaun Jackson. And he just blew his doors off at 32. So I think that's where all the expectations come in, because you look at this offense and you say, forget about it from the Eagles' perspective. Look at it from the other team's perspective. What are you going to try to take away? And, hey, try to double-team Zach Ertz. Alshon Jeffrey's going to kill you. Deshaun's going to kill you. Nelson, Dallas. It's tough to match up with this team.
It really is, and it's amazing that Deshaun Jackson just seems to get faster as he gets older. But, you see A.J. Green getting carted off the other day, and it just makes you immediately think about the Eagles and, oh boy, these training camp days, it's hot. The players don't want to be there. They're getting back into the swing of things, and it's scary to think about the potential of Djax going down with a serious injury. Obviously, Carson Wentz going down, and any key player along the lines of A.J. Green relative to the Eagles. How is Doug Peterson trying to manage and prevent something like that from happening? Obviously, a non-contact injury is what it is, but what is Doug Peterson doing to try and make these practices as easy on the players as possible to avoid an injury like that?
Well, I don't know if you can. It is football. As Zach Ertz talked about this the other day, if you play this game long enough, the injury rate is 100%. You're going to get hurt. So I think from most coaches' perspective, they understand that. They can't legislate injuries. So you just practice and you go through what you have to do. There's only so much you can do. Obviously, there's a lot of advancements in sports science. And, hey, it all stems on a day like this where it's 93 and it's going to be supposedly worse tomorrow. I mean, I was on the field in Minnesota when Corey Stringer died. So, pre that issue, post that issue, the league itself has changed and modernized and obviously needed to. And they stress hydration and water breaks, and that's all built into the collective bargaining agreement, and as are also the scaled down practices. There are no more 2-a-days. There are no more 2-hour, 3-hour sessions. There's limits on the time, how much you can practice, how much you can have the guys in pads. So all of that is sort of built in. And all of that really, especially the hydration aspect, dates all the way back to Corey Stringer.
Football at 4, John McMullen at JF McMullen. John, Jordan Howard, he was the big offseason trade that, I don't know, I mean, how's he fitting in? What kind of role? Are we getting a clearer picture here? Because when you get a running back, you get a new toy, something this team has needed. Everybody kind of said, yeah, when are they going to get a running back? What are you seeing from him?
Well, I think he is what he looked like in Chicago. That's a 2-down back, but he's probably the best 2-down back this team has had in the Doug Peterson era. He's a guy who's proven he can handle a lot of touches and not go down, so that's a positive because the Eagles have had some issues from an injury standpoint there. He seems a guy who's durable. Doug talked about him today. First thing he mentioned, though, from a negative standpoint, was pass protection. I think that's one of the issues. He doesn't catch the football well, so I do think he's limited, but this is a team that uses a committee, and he'll be used as the lead back, but certainly somebody else is going to be on the field on third downs, most likely Darren Sproles, at least early in the season. And perhaps Miles Sanders can prove he can handle that role, but I think that would come later. So he is what he is, and he's going to be what he was in Chicago, where it was Jordan Howard and Tariq Cohen. And it's going to be a similar situation here. He'll be a 2-down back, but he's not going to be much of an impact from a pass-catching perspective.
Yeah, no, I see that. Miles Sanders at least is getting some reps, so I guess the injury concern, because we had talked after some of the mini camps, hey, he might be behind. Is that the case?
Well, I think he was behind because he didn't practice at all in spring, and Doug mentioned that would make it more difficult. I think that's one of the reasons they brought Darren Sproles back, because all of a sudden they understood, look, he's probably not going to be ready to help on third down at least early in the season, because when you look at young running backs, that's what coaches stress almost about everybody to a man, is they need to understand pass protection, blitz pickups, and then you take into account they just paid the quarterback who's got an injury history $108 million. So do you really want a rookie who wasn't asked to pass protect at Penn State all that much to be picking up blitzes in the NFL? I think the Eagles got to the offseason, that 5-week, 6-week dead period, and said, I don't know if we feel comfortable with that. And that's one of the reasons Darren Sproles is back. So I think he did get set back, but not from a physical perspective. They were erring on the side of caution, and Doug said he would be 100% by the start of training camp. He has been. He's been there every day, and he's taken the reps as sort of the second back to Jordan Howard. And I think that's how he'll start, is they'll probably use that rotation where maybe Jordan Howard plays 3 series, then you bring in Miles for 1. But that entire time, Darren would be the third down back. So I think that's how the Eagles are going to handle it, at least early in the season. And then it's up to Miles Sanders to earn more playing time. And ultimately, the Eagles are hopeful that he becomes the 3-down back that they've been looking for since Doug Peterson got here.
So is there a guy who maybe you thought would have made the team because of what we've seen at training camp that has changed?
Well, one we just talked about, Cre'Von LeBlanc. I don't think he's a guarantee. I think Jalen Mills is no longer a guarantee to make this team. I think Matt Collins is hurt again. It's not serious. He said today it looked like a hamstring, but he'll be out probably for another day at least, maybe 2. I think he's got to have a strong summer. Shelton Gibson, who's another player, really is going to have to make this team on special teams. And then linebackers, it's sort of a free-for-all behind Nigel Bradham, who, by the way, is still not practicing and just doing individual stuff. So that's another, to me, that's the biggest concern maybe on this team is linebacker and how that shakes out.
Of course, you can get more at JF McMullen on our website, 973ESPN.com. John McMullen, Football at 4 every day. Eagles, of course, getting ready for their first preseason game a week from Thursday. They'll take on the Tennessee Titans, and you can hear the game right here on 97.3 ESPN. John, it's nice to talk to you again, man. It's been a while.
Yeah, man. You got a championship to tell me about?
No. Well, home. Just spent a nice couple days in Altoona.
Oh, well. Hey, where else would you rather be than Altoona?
No
Maybe
place.
a 95-degree practice field.
That's right. Oh, yes, up there at the NovaCare Center. All right, John, of course, back tomorrow with another edition of Football at 4.